Good morning, everyone. Uh, I will be presenting on Babu's burden, decoding identity through satire in colonial India. In this study, I examine the phenomena of satire deployed against 19th century Bengali Babus or the middle class and attempt to examine the nature of mockery in different literary sources from the early 19th to the middle of the 20th century. This study aims to explore mockery through two dominant lenses. The first section attempts to look at the satire produced by the authors who themselves belong to the elite class, or better known as Bhadraloks. The second section analyzes the mockery found in English publications, where colonial prejudices and presuppositions were used to construct the trope of the effeminate Bengali. It is important to note here that there is not a clear separation of the two sections, as we will also look into how the colonial prejudices translated into Bengali narratives. However, in this study, due to constraints of time, I have been unable to accommodate a third section, that is the satire which emerged from the lower class constituencies of urban Calcutta, which had helped, which had played a major role in establishing the contemporary notion of satire as a lower form within Bengali literary culture. Focused primarily on Bengali and English print media, this research draws strictly from literary texts and deliberately excludes performance-based material such as parodies and musical sketches. Uh, Brief explanation on who are the Babus. The term Babu is generally and historically used to refer to the educated middle class of Bengali citizens who acquire English education, influenced greatly by European scientific rationality, adopted English manners, and sometimes enter the ranks of colonial administration, while Bengalis and Indians more widely had used the term Babu as an honorific. In colonial usage, the term acquired pejorative connotations designed to question the fitness along the lines of race and gender. The identity of the Babus can be ascribed to Thomas Babington Macaulay's vision, as he famously puts it in his Minutes on Education, that is, desire to create a class that would be English in taste, in opinions, in morals, and in intellect, but still Indian in blood and color. This vision materialized in the creation of the educated middle class, the Babus or the Bhadraloks. Their culture took shape through a deliberate cultivation of tastes and manners of two predominant patterns, the rational European and the traditional, or what they classified as the glorious Hindu past. Despite being classified as an urban class, the Babu had rural roots. It was a common practice for zamindars. Zamindars refers to, in simple terms, a powerful landowner or a hereditary aristocrat and revenue collector in the Indian subcontinent. The meaning has changed throughout time. Now, it was common practice for a zamindar to send their son to Calcutta to become educated and secure employment within the colonial administration. It is important to note that the identity of the Babus was never monolithic. Instead, it functioned as a fluid signifier, carrying a range of connotations that shifted according to the specific social or political context, or in some cases, different cultural context. Now, self-directed satire became a hallmark of the 19th century Babus, serving both as an expression of profound anxiety over their eroding traditional foundations and a defensive impulse to reclaim them. The earliest source of such caricature was the text Kolikata Kamalaloy, published in 1823 by Bhavani Charan Bandyopadhyay. Now, the story is presented as a dialogue between a foreigner and a resident Babu of Calcutta. The narrative employs satire to articulate a growing unease over the infiltration of Western social mores into the sanctified space of tradition. So, the story often treats the Western social mores as a form of moral deviance. Now, this is evident from the foreigner's comment, and I quote, I had the perception that the Babus, in the name of rituals, consume meat, or when someone dies, they still drink brandy. By the codified scriptural authority of the 19th century Bengal, it is known that these were often prohibited during such rituals or traditions. Acts of drinking brandy or smoking or consuming meat. Now, to this, the resident replies that he must be confused between the Bhadralok and the Babu. Here, satire stems particularly from the distinction the resident makes between the two. He seems to be marking out the Babus as an aberrant variant of the wider respectable classes and reduces them to imitators of both the Bhadralok class and English subjects. The Babus for the resident became a new order that reflected all that was wrong in the urban milieu of Calcutta, as they could neither be complete Bhadraloks nor Englishmen. Now, moving on to the next text, the text Alaler Ghore Dulal, or as it translates to the spoiled child of the house of Alal, written by Peri Chand Mitra under the pseudonym Tekchand Thakur in 1857, is celebrated not only for its pioneering use of humor and vernacular form, but also for its status as the first modern Bengali novel. Now, the tale centers on Motilal and his father Baburam's Babu, which is also a play in itself, and Motilal's misdeeds. Now, a principal theme the author broaches is insolence, is the insolence and incivility that characterizes Motilal's behavior, representing broader incivility of the Babu elite. Through the satirized example of Motilal, the author presents his reader with the cautionary warning that these children who would eventually become Babus will be little more than rascals and charlatans themselves. In the fourth chapter of this novel, Motilal, along with his confidants and his other friends called Holodhar and Godadhar, are shown indulging in dissolute pastimes such as card playing, kite flying, abusing female servants, and many other such acts through which the author raises questions about the morality of these children. As the narrative of the story progresses, the children end up in prison for their actions. The author also drew on Baburam Babu's lavish lifestyle to present a generalized critics of the Babus. Now, amidst this cultural milieu, the author Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay occupies a paradoxical position. On one hand, he maintained a rigid stand against the mockery and caricature produced by the urban lower classes, which is most evident in his essay titled Ashleelata, which translates to obscenity, published in December 1873, where he denounced the literature of the lower orders and formally endorsed the Society for the Suppression of Public Obscenity, which was formed around September 18 on the same year, uh, September 1873, by Keshav Chandra Sen, another Bengali reformer. On the other hand, he himself, through several works, had promoted his scathing view of the Babus and Bhadraloks of Calcutta. In his essay titled Babu, published in 1872, in the magazine Bongo Darshan, the title of which has been pasted here as a picture on the top right hand side corner. Uh, so the essay writes, and I quote, "The Babu is a person who is an expert orator but adopts a foreign language and tears down any connection with the mother tongue, is weak in writing and in understanding any text, unable to contribute anything worthwhile or meaningful to society, spends day and night intoxicated, and is driven entirely by greed." Interestingly, Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay, who was employed as district magistrate as well as deputy collector, never produced any scathing satirical remarks about the specific category of elite Bhadraloks or comprador Rajas who occupied respectable positions in colonial administration or had friendly relationship with the colonial officers. Instead, he specifically targets the educated middle class, the clerks, or in Bengali better known as the Keranis, and presented them as unsuitable candidates for assuming a position of hegemony as they are unable to handle neither themselves nor their household. In a similar vein, the text Hutum Pecha Noksha, which has been recently translated by Sharup Roy, and he translates the title to The Observant Owl, the Hutum's Business of 19th Century Calcutta. In the text, Kali Prasanna Singh, the author, utilizes a sharp satirical lens to dismantle the Babu's hegemonic ambitions. Singh exposes how the elite section of the Babus sought to dominate the lower order while they were simultaneously sidelined by colonial rule. In terms of language, the text also marks a radical shift where the author, who Kali Prasanna Singh, he himself is a elite Bhadralok and was known for the use of Sanskritized Bengali exclusive to the elites. But specifically for this text, the author used a colloquial form of Bengali which was celebrated for its accessibility and simplicity, at the same time condemned by critics as linguistic perversion. And we often find like reviews of this text by authors such as Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay, whom I discussed in the previous slide. He was writing that uh, the text is not only uh, worthless, if I may be candid, but also is a sort of perversive form of Bengali language. He suggests, the author, the Kaliprasanna Singh suggests that the embrace of foreign customs by the Babus was a deliberate strategy to secure dominant status, though he notes that this social ladder was far from permanent. Now, what is also interesting that this cultural exchange had unforeseen consequences. Now, inducted into Western education, the Babus were also exposed to new ideas and began to question colonial policies and fight for their rights. Now, on the other hand, satirical magazines such as Bosontok and Horbola Bhar and Pachu Thakur addressed and parodied mostly the questions of development, reformation, and modernity, apart from the quips and puns deployed against the Babus. The physical features in Bosontok is very similar to that of Mr. Punch, portrayed in London Charivari or Punch, as you can see on the left. Um, who in turn, both of them to some extent, is modeled on the dramatic character of Pulcinella Setrulo, which literally translates to a stupid little chick. Now, even the critique of the Babus in these magazines followed an Orientalist framework, stripping the Bengali elite of agency and framing progress as a burden borne solely by the colonizer, a burden. In a strategic counter-narrative, the late 19th century Bengali intelligentsia began to construct an alternative modernity, which was anchored in their pre-colonial and sometimes pre-Mughal spectacular Hindu past that challenged the hegemony of colonial modernity. However, this admiration of an ancient Hindu past or possessing an ancient Hindu constitution, which was itself a result of William Jones's Orientalist endeavors, was never uniform. This heterogeneous position becomes evident from the reformist cum traditionalist debate, which has sufficiently covered by various scholars and does not fall into the purview of this study. Now, moving on to the second section, the public sphere became the primary battlefield for these competing ideologies, with the Ilbert Bill of 1883 imposed by Lord Ripon serving as the central flashpoint that dominated the pages of almost every significant periodical of the day. Excuse me. The bill attempted to give the Indian civil servants the power to try European subjects living in the Mofussil or country towns, which inadvertently sparked acts of protest from Europeans as well as Anglo-Indians, and such protests were termed by the press as the White Mutiny, and their anger was directed at the Babus. Such contentions found their way into British-owned magazines and newspapers such as the Englishman published in Calcutta as well as the Punch published in England. The narrative adopted by such periodicals often lampooned Babu's moral character and lifestyle as being unnaturally effeminate and therefore would always be inferior to the superior masculine European race. Now, this trope becomes a recurring theme expressed in novels like A Glance in Advance or What's in Store for 84. This particular text writes, and I quote, the constitutional timidity of the race made the Bengali civilian unfit to exercise authority over the manly Englishman or even over the manly native races of India. The Babu therefore becomes effeminate not only in respect to the superior European but also in comparison to the other martial races of India, especially Punjab and northeastern Gorkhas, which were also crystallized a result of colonialization. Now, the pervasiveness of this effeminacy trope found another expression in the book Babu Haribungsho Jabarji B.A. by Thomas and Stig Guthrie, who wrote under the pseudonym F. Anstey in 1897. The picture on the right is one scene from the book, while on the left is a picture from another book titled A Bird from Bengal by the same author. Now, in the book Babu Haribungsha Jabarji, the story follows a character with the same name, which is gibberish, who travels to London at the end of 19th century to study law. Now, Haribungsha Jabarji himself is made the butt of merciless mockery through accounts of his clumsiness in navigating through English social life. The story is another example of colonial narrative which believe that despite the qualification of the Babu, he can never be English. What is also interesting is that the rhetoric deployed in the course of the White Mutiny was so virulent and so well publicized that it found a place in Bengali periodicals. However, the narrative was often reversed. A prominent example is a cartoon published by Indranath Bandyopadhyay, one of the most popular cartoonists in 19th century Bengal, in his magazine Panchu Thakur. The cartoon, which is presented here, draws attention not only to the brutish nature of John Bull, the personification of United Kingdom, but also to the resistance of the Babu, who clings determinedly to the higher principle of political fair play and equality before the law on which the Ilbert Bill has been premised. Now, the caption is presented on the right, which reads, John Bull kicking a Babu. You wanted to try me, didn't you? Is this your favorite bill? The Babu, losing his balance. Go, go, I have not let go the principle. Now, it portrays the emergence of a rival voice that directly challenges the colonial order seeking to defend its racially exclusive privileges. The Babus were presented as counter-hegemonic force that is now equipped to challenge and question colonial authority. By 20th century, the narrative of effeminate Bengali and the timorous Babu among the Bengali literary world saw a gradual change. Political mobilization at the face of imperial oppression had paved the way for Babu's counter-hegemonic position. Unlike older patterns of lamenting contemporary effeminacy of the Babus, this new development also adopted satire in a different format. This is based portrayed in a series of 8 cartoons printed in a Bengali periodical named Sochitra Shishi, which published in late 1925, which was published in around 1925. The I've used 4 panels from that cartoon, which are directly relevant. Now, the first figure shows the Babu beating a servant with his umbrella, followed by the same figure shouting at his fellow clerk. And the rest of the 2 panels depict the Babu bending deeper in proportion to the rising rank of the officer he addresses. Now, this cartoon clearly maps a social hierarchy where the Babu's anger is not random, but measured entirely on the status of the person at the receiving end. Such images satirically condemn the attitudes of the Babus, urging them to discard their differential submissiveness toward colonial authorities. By advocating for greater empathy toward their fellow Indians, the satire frames a call for the Babus to become leader. During this period was also changed was the way satire was deployed to sever the trope of effeminacy. So this was one manner. Now other manner was satire was used as a call to action promoting the pursuit of physical strength. Now the following cartoons, as presented here, the following cartoons tells us the story of a weak, sickly Babu who is made to buy an amulet supposed to possess miraculous healing abilities from his in-laws neighbor Nando Dada. The Babu wearing the amulet was woken up in the middle of the night by a divine figure who assured him that he would be cured. On the following morning, he becomes strong and displays his newly acquired powers by breaking a wooden log. So, if we can, okay, moving on. Consequently, satire and caricature evolved into a didactic medium, enforcing new ethos of physical strength as the foundation for Bengali identity, and slowly uh, became the foundation for early revolutionary activity. This endeavor found practical expressions in the opening up of various gymnasia or akhadas and fitness clubs such as those established in various districts by the Bengali revolutionary nationalist organizations such as অনুশীলন Samiti. Now, the image in the background is the where Unushilon Samiti used to hold their meetings, and there was a gymnasium below, which is turned to various shops right now. So, the subject of print media also saw gradual shift from satire to historical novels celebrating Bengali valorous men. A new repertoire of heroes was celebrated to prove that effortness was not an innate Bengali condition, but a colonial imposition. The aim of the National Promotional Society, which considered gymnastic exercises first among the society's tasks, followed by the publication of tracts in Bengali, giving instances of the military prowess of the ancient Bengalis and the reform of the Bengali diet, clearly reflects this shift. In my concluding remarks, I would like to highlight that therefore satire functioned not merely as a tool for ridicule, but as a sophisticated didactic medium that catalyzed a shift in public consciousness. By moving from the mockery of the effeminate Babu to the cultivation of physical strength, satire bridged the gap between passive social commentary and active nationalist mobilization. The picture image the image used here is belongs to the panel where the intoxicated sickly Babu suddenly gains strength from wearing an amulet, which I highlighted earlier. This marks the end of my presentation. Thank you. This is my bibliography. These are my primary sources, and these are my secondary sources. Thank you.